green light and they can do whatever they want. Where that is very rare to get drafted and be able to control the whole system.
Right. Was CC making decisions like?
Yeah.
Within, yeah.
As she should.
No way.
Like, as she should, but I also think that like...
This wasn't a rookie learning the ropes. This was a war, a silent, brutal power struggle playing out on the national stage, and the entire WNBA hoped you wouldn't notice. The #1 draft pick, the woman responsible for selling out every arena she walked into, was being systematically benched by her own coach. Not on the sidelines, but within an offensive system designed to cage her greatest strengths. They told her she was a future, then handed her a playbook from the past. This is the story the league tried to bury. The story of how Caitlyn Clark was forced to dismantle her coach's game plan piece by piece, just to play the game she was drafted to play.
This is what Caitlyn Clark said, and I shared this before. This is what Caitlyn Clark said when joining.
That's the reason why I came here, and that's what she preached to me in the recruiting process. You know, you're going to have the ball in your hands a lot. And I think a lot of my final schools kind of had that same look, but I think the read and react offense that we run was super important for myself. You know, you're making basketball reads. It's not a set. You're not being told what to do every single time you come down the floor. You're just playing the game you love. You're flowing freely. You're playing off your teammates. And that was super, super important for myself. And I think also the past success of what they've done, like it was proven that it was very successful. They've proven that they're a great offensive team. So
what you saw on the court wasn't just basketball. It was a rebellion. And by the end of this, you'll understand why nothing about the Indiana Fever's season was as simple as it seemed. If you're ready for the real story, hit that subscribe button and let's dive in. When Caitlyn Clark arrived in Indiana, she wasn't just a new player. She was a seismic event. The franchise's value skyrocketed. Jerseys flew off the shelves. Every game was a guaranteed sellout. She was a chosen one, drafted to not just save a team, but to redefine it. And in her first interviews, she was crystal clear about why she chose Indiana. She talked about the read and react offense. She said the coach's promise of the ball would be in her hands a lot. They told her she wouldn't be micromanaged, that she wouldn't come down the floor every single time being told what to do. It was going to be about flow, about freedom, about playing an instinctual, chaotic brand of basketball that made her a college legend. This was the blueprint. This was a promise. It was the entire reason she was there. But behind closed doors, a very different plan was being installed. A plan that directly contradicted the very promises made to their new superstar.
It is interesting to see how they've grown to be teammates because both of them need the ball in their hands.
Okay, yes, they both need the ball in their hands, but the difference is Kelsey Mitchell don't pass the ball once it's in her hands. Caitlyn Clark does pass the ball. Caitlyn Clark led the league in assists. What are we talking about here? What are we talking about? I get it. Sophie is trying to make everybody, she's trying to give the story while making everyone look good as well.
Head coach Stephanie White came in with her own blueprint, one forged during her time with the Connecticut Sun. It was a structure-controlled, half-court offense built on set plays and deliberate execution. It was meticulous, methodical, and designed for a different era of basketball, built around a half-court scorer like a Diana Taurasi, not a pace-pushing engine like Caitlyn Clark. The philosophical disconnect was instant and massive.
I think this is when they played Atlanta. Look, watch this. So this is Caitlyn frustrated. Caitlyn is very frustrated. Now, in this same sequence of this clip, you can see Caitlyn. Let me pause this. So that is Caitlyn yelling at Stephanie.
Imagine scouting a hurricane and then trying to force it to follow the predictable path of a gentle river. That was the fundamental miscalculation. Clark, a player whose very identity is built on electrifying deep threes and full-court visionary passes that break defenses before they even get set, was suddenly being reprogrammed. She was relegated to an off-ball role, running off screens like a traditional shooting guard, a position that completely neutralized her greatest gift, her decision-making with the ball in her hands. There are even multiple reports and game logs confirming she was positioned at small forward for entire games, not just brief stretches. Think about the sheer implication of that.
And with Kelsey.
Now, before she gets into the Kelsey Mitchell part, Stephanie White, you knew you were coming to the Indiana Fever. You should already know the system Caitlyn wants to play. Why did she have to make changes to your system to play her game? And we also know that this did not go over so smoothly because we saw Stephanie White taking shots at her on TV. We saw the back and forth argument when Caitlyn Clark was going off on her in the tunnel during the Atlanta Dream game when they were going into the tunnel for halftime. We saw
the most prolific playmaker to enter the league in a generation. The player you drafted to be your quarterback was being stationed in the corner, away from the action, treated as a secondary option. The engine of the offense wasn't just being tuned down, it was being used as a spare part, and the entire machine was sputtering because of it. This wasn't just a tactical choice. It felt like a fundamental rejection of the very talent they had spent the number 1 pick to acquire.
Let me see.
Because those types of athletes, they get to come into an organization, they have the green light, and they can do whatever they want. Where that is very rare to get drafted and be able to control the whole system.
Right. Was CC making decisions like?
Yeah.
Within, yeah.
As she should.
No way.
As she should, but I also think that they go
Oh,
ahead.
that's crazy. I didn't realize that. She's just young. I just didn't think that.
But when you have a generational talent like that, she should have a lot to say of.
The statistics tell a damning story that goes far beyond simple points per game. Caitlyn Clark didn't just lead the league in assists, she dominated the category with 8.4 per game, a figure that often translated to nearly a third of her team's entire scoring output when she was on the floor. She sees the court with a preternatural vision, a quarterback's mind in a shooter's body, capable of threading passes that few players would even attempt, let alone complete. Yet, the offensive system imposed by Stephanie White often treated her and teammate Kelsey Mitchell as interchangeable, replaceable parts. Now, let's be clear. Kelsey Mitchell is a brilliant and explosive scorer, one of the best pure bucket getters in the WNBA. But her career average of around 2.1 assists per game paints a clear picture. She is a finisher, a player whose primary instinct when she gets the ball is to attack the rim and score. These are not two players who use the ball in the same way. One is a pure scorer, the other is an offensive architect. But White's system, in its quest for balanced ball movement, often rotated ball handling duties in a way that felt forced and artificial. It forced Clark to play without the rock in her hand for long, frustrating stretches where she became a decoy rather than a dictator. This wasn't about utilizing multiple weapons to create a multifaceted attack. It was about forcing a square peg into a round hole, a philosophical insistence that the system was more important than the superstar.
The system, Mike said. Sophie Cunningham confirms that many of us knew this. Caitlyn Clark has a lot to say. Will have a lot to say over the offensive system. Anyone that knows ball knows something changed after halftime of their Atlanta game, and it stayed.
The entire team suffered for this rigidity, as the offense often looked stagnant and predictable, a far cry from the free-flowing, high-octane attack that had been promised and that the roster was clearly built for. The tension wasn't just simmering beneath the surface. It was a pot on the verge of boiling over, and the lid finally blew off during a pivotal game against the Atlanta Dream. As the team headed into the locker room at halftime, cameras caught a chilling, unscripted exchange that laid bare the conflict for the entire world to see. Caitlyn Clark's body language was screaming volumes where her words were momentarily muffled. Her jaw was clenched so tight it looked like it could crack stone. Her fists were balled up, her posture rigid with a fury that was palpable even through a television screen. She was visibly, furiously laying into her head coach, Stephanie White. This wasn't a calm discussion about strategic adjustments. This was an eruption, a raw release of months of built-up frustration. Sources close to the team later confirmed that this explosion was a direct result of a specific, infuriating stretch in the second quarter, where Clark was forced into her off-ball role and, astoundingly, barely touched the basketball for 4 entire minutes of game time. For minutes.
Not bring your Connecticut system, have her playing small forward for a handful of games, and now she gotta change the system and enforce her power? Come on now. You got to read between the lines on some things. Here.
Mitchell, like those two, it is very interesting to see how that they have. It is interesting to see how they've grown to be teammates because both of them need the ball in their hands.
For the team's primary playmaker, the one who makes the offense tick, that's an eternity of being rendered a spectator in her own game. This was the moment the generational talent stopped asking for permission and started demanding change. It was the point of no return. The carefully maintained facade of coach-player harmony shattered in that tunnel, revealing a power struggle that was now out in the open. This wasn't a rookie being disrespectful. This was a competitor who knew she was being misused and had reached her absolute limit, realizing that her career and her team's success were being held hostage by a system that refused to adapt to her unique genius.
And when they both can elevate each other, that team is unstoppable. You get what I'm saying?
I agree. When Caitlyn Clark and Kelsey Mitchell are both playing like at a high level, and I do feel like they have good chemistry. Like we saw it second half of the season, even at points this season. Like I don't think there was ever a Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlyn.
And what happened next is the most compelling, undeniable evidence in this entire saga. After that explosive confrontation in Atlanta, a palpable shift occurred within the Indiana Fever. A switch had been flipped. Caitlyn Clark, by all accounts from insiders and evidenced by the dramatic change in on-court product, stopped running the restrictive plays she was given. She began to decisively wave off sets that she knew wouldn't work. She seized control of the offense, often bringing the ball up the court herself and dictating the pace with an iron will. She started playing her game, the chaotic read and react, deep three bombing style that made her a national phenomenon at Iowa. And you know what? The Indiana Fever didn't just improve, they suddenly caught fire. They went on their most impressive and electrifying run of the entire season. The pace of the game accelerated dramatically. The ball movement became crisper, not because of set plays, but because of the spontaneous creativity Clark inspires. The offense looked unstoppable.
When Stephanie White was in Connecticut, we all remember there was some runner-ups, and what happened? The same shit happened again. Runner-up. Blame it on injuries all you want. Stephanie White offense could not get y'all to a championship. Caitlyn can. At the end of the day, Caitlyn's system read and react, that can. Guys, get down in the comment section. Let me know y'all thoughts about this, man. Keep them.
Clark's usage rate spiked. Her assist numbers jumped even higher, and the team started winning games in dramatic, headline-grabbing fashion. It was proof in real time that her system worked. The very style the coach had been publicly and privately suppressing was, in fact, the key to unlocking the team's true championship-level potential. This wasn't a theory anymore. It was a demonstrable fact played out on national television. The team's success became Caitlyn Clark's validation, a silent but powerful argument that reverberated through the league and put immense pressure on the coaching staff to finally fully relinquish control and embrace the chaos that came with their superstar. But the resistance from the top didn't just vanish overnight. Even as the team racked up wins and looked more dynamic playing Clark's way, Coach Stephanie White's underlying discomfort was sometimes visible for those who knew where to look. She occasionally made pointed public comments criticizing some of Clark's deep, logo threes, subtly labeling them as hero ball or questionable shot selection. Yet, in a telling double standard, she rarely, if ever, applied that same critical label to Kelsey Mitchell's isolation scoring attempts, even when those plays resulted in heavily contested mid-range jumpers or difficult drives into traffic. This inconsistency revealed a deeper, more philosophical truth. It wasn't necessarily always about the pure basketball quality of the shot, but about who was taking it and, more importantly, how it fit into a predetermined, controlled system. Mitchell's isolations, while sometimes low percentage, are a known quantity within a half-court set. They are calculated, if difficult, outcome. Clark's deep threes, however, represent a form of basketball anarchy to a system-oriented coach. They break the conventional spacing and timing of a set play. The structured Connecticut offense White champion craved control and predictability above all else, while Caitlyn's entire game thrives on controlled chaos and exploiting broken plays before they even form. The coach's core philosophy was fundamentally at odds with her star players' most potent instincts, creating a low-grade friction that never fully disappeared, even during the most successful stretches of the winning streak. It was a battle between the safety of the system and the brilliance of the individual, and that battle was far from over. This entire conflict is cast in an even starker, more ominous light when you examine Stephanie White's professional history. Her system, the very one she was so determined to install in Indiana, has a very specific and revealing track record. When she was an assistant and then head coach with the Connecticut Sun, they were consistently a very good, well-respected team. They were competitive, disciplined, and they consistently made deep playoff runs. But they never, ever won the ultimate prize. They were always the bridesmaid, never the bride. They always came agonizingly close, but could never get over the final hurdle to win a championship. Now, fast forward to Indiana with Caitlyn Clark. The team, after finally being forced to embrace her instinctual read and react style, makes a stunning Cinderella run all the way to the finals. And what is the final result? They become the runner-up, the exact same outcome. This cannot be dismissed as a simple coincidence. It's a pattern, a haunting echo from her past. It strongly suggests that while Stephanie White's system is disciplined and good enough to get you to the brink of glory, it inherently lacks the unpredictable, game-breaking, transcendent element needed to win it all against the absolute best competition. It's a system that can build a contender, but not crown a champion. And that game-breaking element is precisely what a player like Caitlyn Clark naturally provides. Her ability to hit a 38-foot three as the shot clock expires, or whip a full-court pass for an easy layup, is the very ingredient that has been missing from White's coaching formula, the ingredient that turns a great team into a legendary one. The evidence was not just in the present failure, but in a past full of them. This brings us to the most controversial and heartbreaking part of the story. Caitlyn Clark's incredible late-season push, a direct result of her seasoned control of the offense, was brutally derailed by an untimely injury. The very aggression and relentless drive that saved the Fever season ultimately took a physical toll, and she couldn't return for the championship finals. This was the moment of truth, the ultimate test scenario for Stephanie White's philosophy. With Clark's sideline, the excuse was perfectly laid out for media and the fans. We ran out of gas. Our star player was hurt. What could we do without our best player? It was a narrative that was easy to accept on the surface. But for those who've been watching the entire turbulent season, a much more disturbing and complex question began to emerge. Without Clark, the Indiana Fever didn't just lose a scorer, they lost their entire offensive operating system. And in that vacuum, they didn't invent a new, inspired way to play. They defaulted. They reverted directly back to the system Stephanie White had wanted to run all along, the structured, half-court sets from her Connecticut playbook. And the result was a mirror image, a carbon copy of her past. A hard-fought, respectable, but ultimately second-place finish. The runner-up trophy must have felt like a haunting case of deja vu. So, we're left with a haunting, unanswered question that the Fever organization desperately hopes will fade into the off-season noise. Was Caitlyn Clark's injury the only reason the Fever lost the championship? Or was it that in her absence, the team instinctively defaulted back to a system that we now know from a decade of evidence has a proven history of falling just short when the pressure is at its absolute highest? The evidence is circumstantial, yes, but the pattern is so undeniable it feels like a law of basketball physics. Let's break down what we saw in those finals games without Clark. The offense didn't just look less potent. It looked fundamentally different. The pace, which had been among the league's fastest during Clark's reign, slowed to a crawl. The game became a grinded-out, possession-by-possession slog, which perfectly played into hands of their more physically dominant opponents. The spontaneous ball movement, the cross-court passes that broke defenses, the threat of shot from 30 feet that stretched the court to its breaking point, it all vanished. Instead, we saw more isolation plays, more forced shots as the shot clock wound down, and a predictable pattern of entry passes into the post that the opposing defense was easily prepared for. It was a Connecticut system in its pure, unadulterated form. And while it looked disciplined and organized, it lacked the one element that defines every modern championship team, the ability to create chaos and exploit it. Without Clark's audacious passing and gravitational pull on defenders, the floor seemed to shrink. Driving lanes closed up. Open looks became contested ones. The Fever were competing, but they weren't threatening to win in the same way. They were playing not to lose, rather than playing to win. This is a core criticism of White's philosophy. It optimizes for consistency over explosiveness, and in a championship series, you need explosive, game-breaking moments to secure a title. Now, consider the alternative history, the greatest what if in the Fever's recent history. What if Clark had been healthy? We don't have to guess. We have the blueprint from the games immediately preceding her injury. The team was not just winning. They were dominating through a style of play that was unsustainable for opponents. Clark's presence on the court creates a psychological and tactical dilemma that no set play can fully account for. Defenders have to pick her up from the moment she crosses half court, which creates sprawling driving lanes for players like Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston. Her willingness to throw the full court pass turns every made basket by the opponent into a potential fast break opportunity, preventing them from ever setting their defense. Her game is built on creating and capitalizing on chaos, while Stephanie White's system is built on imposing order. In the finals, against a top-tier team, order was not enough. The opponent was too disciplined, too prepared for a conventional battle. They were ready for the set plays. What they may not have been ready for was the hurricane. We saw glimpses of it in the regular season. The 38-foot dagger against New York, the 20-assist triple-doubles. These are moments that break a series open. Those moments were absent in the finals, and their absence felt louder than any crowd. This leads us to the most uncomfortable speculation of all. Did the very nature of the system contribute to the injury? This isn't about assigning blame, but about understanding cause and effect. The read and react offense Clark thrives in is about instinct and flow. The system she was often forced into is one of constant stops and starts, of sharp cuts and physical screens, of fighting through traffic to create space for others. It is a more physically taxing, grinding style of basketball for a player of her usage. Was the cognitive dissonance of trying to fit into a box while simultaneously trying to break out of it a contributing factor to the physical strain? We'll never know for sure, but the correlation between her peak performance in her natural system and the subsequent physical breakdown is a tragic irony that cannot be ignored. The evidence, when pieced together, forms a damning picture. The preseason promise of a free-flowing offense was broken on day one. The statistical proof showed a superstar being misused. The volcanic confrontation in Atlanta revealed the human cost of that miscalculation. The team's spectacular surge after Clark took control provided the experimental data that her way worked. And the final, failed chapter without her, running the coach's original system, provided the control group. The conclusion of this brutal, season-long experiment seems clear. Stephanie White's system, while structurally sound, has a ceiling, and that ceiling is second place. Now, the Indiana Fever front office stands at the most critical crossroads in franchise history. They are not deciding on a minor contract extension or a draft pick. They are deciding on a philosophical identity. Do they fully, unequivocally commit to building the entire organization around Caitlyn Clark's unique generational gifts? This means empowering her to be the undeniable system, the offensive coordinator on the floor, and instructing the coaching staff to build a strategy that amplifies her chaos rather than containing it. This is what championship teams do. The Warriors didn't ask Steph Curry to stop shooting threes. They built an entire motion offense to get him more open looks. The Mavericks don't tell Luka Doncic to stop taking step-back threes. They clear out the side and let him work. Now, the Indiana Fever front office stands at a crossroads. They have a generational talent, a player who has proven that her style of play leads to winning basketball and electrified crowds. They also have a head coach with a firmly entrenched system. The choice for the upcoming season seems stark and unavoidable. Or is it? If you listen to the top decision makers, you might be surprised to learn that this choice has already been made. And the answer isn't firing the coach. Following a season where the Fever got within one win of the finals, General Manager Amber Cox didn't just offer mild support for Stephanie White. She gave her a resounding endorsement, calling her a master communicator, and shockingly stating that in her book, White was the coach of the year. This isn't the language of an organization preparing to make a change. This is a front office publicly locking in its leader. So, what does this mean for building around Caitlyn Clark? The plan isn't to find a new coach, but to execute the original one with more force. The front office isn't explicit. The priority is to aggressively reshape the roster to fit an up-tempo, creative system that maximizes Clark's unique gifts. The message from President of Basketball Operations Kelly Krauskopf has been clear. If you're a smart player, you should want to play with Caitlyn Clark because she gets you the ball in places you didn't even know you were open. This isn't a compromise. It's a declaration that Clark's passing and vision are the system. The upcoming free agency period will be the ultimate test of this commitment. The front office knows they must surround Clark with up-tempo defenders who can shoot. The most critical move? Re-signing Kelsey Mitchell, the explosive scorer who had a career year and whose speed and shooting make her the ideal backcourt partner for Clark. The front office has already labeled Mitchell their top priority, proving they understand the need to protect and enhance their core offensive weapons. The league is watching. The fans are demanding answers. The evidence from front office suggests they are not just listening, they are building. They are betting that a healthy Caitlyn Clark, a re-signed Kelsey Mitchell, and a coach they believe in can learn from the heartbreak and almost season and take the final step. The mandate is clear. Build a roster that turns Clark's chaos into a championship. The real question is no longer about the front office listening, but about whether their bet will finally pay off. Let me know in the comments below. Do you trust the front office's plan? Can Stephanie White's system evolve into a championship winning one with the right pieces? Or is this a missed opportunity to fully unleash a revolution?